Okay, awesome. So, hi everyone. This is actually the reason why you didn't get um, there's a hand up. Does that mean I should stop or?
I don't know. Jeff, did you have something to say?
Okay, I'm just gonna carry on.
Could just be waving.
So actually, there was a conversation I was having with Scott a few weeks ago. So I decided to change up my slides. So that's why you didn't get a title up until now. Because originally I was going to do this talk, I think at the last testing town hall, and I couldn't make it. So I hope you guys will enjoy it. And I want to talk also about the challenges when it comes to XDR testing and what at least we found from our own experiments, our own research when it comes to this sort of testing. So first of all, who am I? I'm the CTO for SC Labs. I've been testing for about 13 years now. Those of you who know Simon, actually we had our 30th anniversary literally last week. And very recently, I'm also an AMTSO board member. So thank you for everybody who voted me for that there, and really appreciate it. Right, so I think the first thing that we should talk about is XDR testing as rare as I say it is? So it was interesting to see one new XDR test pop up in the testing announcements earlier, John. I think, yeah, we should talk about it at the working group that we have. But as far as we've seen so far, there's been only about 2 or 3 test houses that are talking about doing an XDR test. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. It's a very complex topic, so I'll try to speak about it a bit here. For those of you who don't know, I'm also part of the XDR working group here. First of all, let's go. For those of you who are F1 fans, let's go for a short view back to the past here. And look at the sort of evolution of testing from where we started to now. I'm not going to cover all of it, obviously, but I think it's important to remind ourselves of how testing has developed across the years, because XDR is such a complex topic. So, we started with things like malware scanners, which by today's standards are fairly basic to run as tests. We went into real world protection testing and several iterations of that. For our cases, we went to endpoint protection, firewall testing, EDR testing, and so on. So all of these have their own challenges and their own new opportunities for testers. And I think when we tie it back to XDR, you'll see that a lot of it is down to the sheer volume of possible definitions of XDR. So if I look at, let's just take endpoint testing. Endpoint testing in itself, you can look at detection, you can look at prevention, you can look at a particular layer when it comes to the endpoint itself. You are filtering, maybe design a test specifically only for that. However, when it comes to XDR, you have to take such a wide approach when it comes to your testing. So if we look at endpoint testing, for example, I'm going to compare our testing, since I don't know the ins and outs of everybody else's. We started off with public malware and false positives back in Dennis Technology Labs, for those of you who remember those. Then we added target attacks, but that at that point was fairly basic. If you had the Metasploit module, maybe things like that. Then we really introduced target attacks. So it went into more diverse frameworks, maybe writing your own exploit and so on. And after that, maybe you add on phishing on top of it as a different module. So the point I'm trying to make across here is that this test has had time to evolve, and across the board, you need more and more expertise to run the test. And in my opinion, I think this presents a sort of barrier of entry when it comes to XDR testing. A quick note, for example, automation to a certain extent is probably possible when it comes to endpoint testing, depending on your approach here. But as we get later, you'll see that automation is very, very hard to do, which as a business makes your costs quite high when it comes to this testing. A rating is quote unquote easy. It's another main topic of discussion when it comes to XDR. There's so many different definitions of it. How do you come up with a rating that is actually fair for everybody when it comes to what they actually offer? So just a few more here. You know, the steps that you would take when it comes to endpoint testing. You'll probably only consider one operating system. It would be, you could source and validate the samples, and then you end up with a public corpus. You then get onto TAs, and hopefully after you get the single framework down, you then diversify and add your evasions on top of it. And even within false positives, it's not just a simple, is it just a binary or is it a URL? You probably have to consider things like scenarios and so on. So all of this is really building up to quite high research and development costs for us as testers, even when it comes to just looking at one single test. Now, let's actually talk about XDR here. There's so many different definitions of XDR when it comes when you look in the market. I just chose two from Microsoft and Palo Alto. Microsoft says it's a holistic security solution that utilizes automation and AI to reduce response time across multiple workloads. A lot of people consider Palo Alto as the pioneers of the XDR term, and their definition is something along the lines of, it's a comprehensive cybersecurity approach that integrates and correlates data from multiple security tools to enhance your threat detection and response. Now, a lot of the functionality of XDR at the start of it was compared to SIEMs. A lot of the features that people were pushing, you could probably find in an old-fashioned SIEM, where it would take in all the data from everything that you have and present it to you. Across the years, there has been more and more integration, both from single vendor offerings or multiple vendors, allowing third-party integration, which has its positives and negatives, which I'll get to in a bit. For us as XDR testers, what this means is we have to, okay, what definition do you align with? What do you consider? Do you consider XDR only as a single ecosystem? So do I have to stick to only Palo Alto and have their firewall, their endpoint, their email, their SIEM all in one, or do I have to consider all of the different integrations they have? As soon as you start going in with that approach, it becomes quite hard to come up with a solid definition of it. For us, we try to keep it as simple as possible. I'm not going to redefine the term here because there's already so many out there. For us, it's a multitude of products working together. How they interact, as long as they benefit the defenders, that's really what's important here. We do categorize the products within a solution. So some examples are things as endpoint security products working together with cloud email server protections, or with identity as a service solutions, and so on. There can be any number of permutations in here. We should try to be as flexible as possible when it comes to what kind of products we allow here. when you talk to enterprises, it's really hard to find a single vendor enterprise. Buying your entire stack from one vendor is almost there's almost no offerings of that around. It's a very, very rare case. I think there was a Forrester Wave report that got released, I think, a few weeks ago now. And even in the market itself, we see more and more vendors going away from supporting third-party integration and rather focusing on either building their own coverage for all the different layers, or buying the right company to cover their weaknesses when it comes to that. So it'll be interesting to monitor what happens in the future when it comes to how well these third-party integrations carry on. Next, when we develop an XDR test, we have to look at the infrastructure. To start with, this is a very basic example of one. And the main thing that I wanted to come across here is the sort of flexibility that you need to have when it comes to both the infrastructure and the rating. You want to strike a balance between allowing vendors to represent their strengths, but at the same time, when it comes to private enterprises asking, hey, which XDR is the best, it's very hard to answer when it comes to comparing them. It's almost impossible to have an apples to apples comparison here. So we have to try to keep that in mind when it comes to consistency of results across vendors. And I'm not talking about repeatable results, because that's misunderstood. That comes without saying. What I'm talking about here is, if I take a report from vendor A to vendor B, how my threats and how my tests are actually executed. So let's talk about rating. A lot of things to consider here. When it comes to something like endpoint testing across the years, for example, efficacy testing was good enough. So just rating how good you are at preventing some exploits, that's usually enough. However, with XDR, you have to look at how well a solution integrates. How does it empower defenders? And that gets more and more difficult again when you have to consider all the different kinds of XDR opportunities available to that. One of the biggest things that we should consider as testers is testers should not build tests that push vendors to build features for the sake of passing a test. They should showcase the performance of these products in the real world. So one of the biggest compliments that we can have as testers is when somebody has actually seen a positive impact from our test in terms of building a new feature or new or updating something that has actually had a positive impact on their customers. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're here for, is the end customer is the one that should benefit from us as testers and as vendors. There's things like total cost of ownership that you probably should consider when it comes to XDR testing as well. This is a very tough subject to tackle, especially when it comes to regionalization of these products and how these products are acquired. It's to give an accurate representation of this is very, very hard. So what was our approach when it comes to this? Let's tackle the efficacy part of it first. So our focus on XDR is to try to put an emphasis on how it empowers defenders. And we try to also convey a message that, hey, you may not need the whole solution here. So it's important to showcase what each of the components from the solution does when it comes to the rating. And that should inform the readers of the reports of, hey, okay, if I care about these techniques, I probably get coverage from this XYZ component and how it builds in. Now, when it comes to the threats themselves, I think everybody by now is familiar with MITRE's techniques and so on. I won't cover that. But we've tried to go with the approach of defining primary and auxiliary techniques when it comes to our tests. So to start with, for us, auxiliary techniques are techniques that an attacker executes that are prerequisites to a primary technique or are used for information reconnaissance related to activity later during the attack plan. Similarly, to this is we've tried to remove the approach of, hey, just detect as much as possible and you'll get a good score. We tried to showcase that, hey, some of these techniques are not as important as the others. It's a very fine line to walk, but every time we push a threat series out, from now on, it's pushed with the primary and auxiliary name next to them when it comes to XDR testing. And primary techniques for us, it's quite self-explanatory is techniques that exhibit significant malicious activity to progress the malicious actor's foothold in the infrastructure. So, things like your escalating privileges, your exfiltrating data, or things like that. On top of that is the number of products that we've seen in recent years of trying to alert on everything. And one of the points of the XDR is trying to solve really is just loud noises. There's so much noise out there when it comes to everything coming in. We actually had, we've seen products have 50,000 alerts in one day. And when it comes to deploying that in the real world, a defender will absolutely hate you for doing that. And it's usually in the pursuit of this 100% coverage of the so-and-so matrix. So to try to tackle that, we have tried to introduce a new comparison metric, and it's alert efficiency. So to go back to my previous point of how do you compare these products, this is how we think one part of these solutions can be looked at is alert efficiency. And we are currently ongoing research for this, as in we're doing the test for these, but we are trying to showcase where each product lies on this sort of continuum of alerts. I didn't want to end up with another quadrant or another magic thing. And it's also impossible to find what's the perfect number of alerts. If somebody is happy to deal with 50,000 alerts per day, that's their prerogative, go for it. But what we can do as testers is show you, hey, this is how the product performed in terms of efficacy, and this is how loud it was across our engagement. It's not going to have a final impact on the the AAA or AA or 1A or whatever award you receive, but it gives a transparency when it comes to your customers, or it also gives the vendors something to, depending on the messaging that they want to come across, this is where we stand on this continuum. Just a few more slides I have left is something that is, again, very tricky when it comes to this, is false positives or suboptimal sort of detections. And from our side here, I think we had to also take a scenario-based approach, because there's such flexibility when it comes to the number of components as part of the solution. We couldn't design something that is bespoke for every single type of offering out there, just because the permutations are so high. So for us, we've taken a scenario-based approach when it comes to this. I won't give in, if people care about plus 10s and plus 7s and so on, I have to have a conversation about that separately. Should be an email on LinkedIn, or we'll talk about afterwards. But that's our approach when it comes to FPs. Now, I talked a lot about us, but I do think it's important to talk about weaknesses to our approach, because I'm well aware there's some of them out there. And for example, the very first one are people are going to say about the false positives that we just mentioned, and about the scenarios chosen. Each of them each year will change, and while they're subject to us speaking to your customers and speaking to admins, people will always prefer their data compared to our data. Another big thing is TCO, total cost of ownership. For us, the way we are going to tackle this is by our transparency requirement when it comes to this, and I have a slide for that later on, because as mentioned before, it's such a unique approach when it comes to how you get about purchasing these products, that it would not be fair for us to say, hey, this is how much it costs to run vendor Y for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and so on. Another issue when it comes to our approach to, hey, let's just allow as much as possible, and we're going to need to not have any restrictions to the kind of products you can have in here, is the executions are quite high, and this leads to more and more complexity when it comes to deployment and configuration and the report building. I can safely tell you that going through these sort of tests, there's been, in terms of documentation, it's been the hardest that we've ever had to work for when it comes to what we're going to push to the public in terms of transparency of deployments and versioning and configuration and so on. And lastly, the one thing that I haven't talked about is prevention. For us right now, we are focusing on detection only, but we hope to have something focused on prevention as well next year. The last thing I'll talk about is reporting. And how do you build a report for such a complex topic? XDR testing has brought up another issue when it comes to comparatives. Getting comparatives in established sectors in cybersecurity, such as endpoint, is quote unquote easy. It's definitely not easy, but it's easier. But when everybody has their own ways of defining what XDR is, um, right now we don't see a way for it to have a clear comparative. Hey, there's a Jan report that says X is better than Y. And I also don't think it's a fair comparison because, as we said before, each enterprise has their own requirements. So when it comes to our approach here is transparency is a must. The disclosure process here when it comes to deployment is quite intense. Our requirements are that the complete solution name needs to be the same as is identified in sales and marketing. We are disclosing every single license that we applied to the testing solution and each component and each version of that. And the biggest challenge of them all is configuration of all of these. Configuring these products is hard even for people who do this on a daily basis due to third-party integration and so on. And what we have from our side is, when possible, we have exported the configuration as much as possible. And when that's not possible, there's going to be appendixes and appendixes of this is the flag that you need to set to get this result. Because you will read the techniques, detections, and the detections in each scenarios. We believe that the readers must be able to replicate the configuration that we used as accurately as possible. And the best way to do that is by giving as much configuration disclosure as possible here. So just to go back to the original question here when it comes to why it's quite rare to see tests in this market is I think the cost to run all of this is one of them. I think the barrier of entry is quite high. One of the things that in my discussion with Scott I realized is if you are already familiar with multiple layers of security, you come in as an advantage, or if you already have tests are developed in all of these or all of these components, then it becomes easier. But still putting that all together in a unified approach, similar to how it goes to developing these products, developing the test is hard as well. Well, it's important. I think customers now are flooded with hot new things every couple of years. So this is what they need to get. You need to buy this, and salespeople, go in with you need this component, you need this component, and we also need this component. So I think it's important that when it comes to us as testers is to showcase what each component's value when it comes to the detections that they give that they bring to the table and how they integrate. Another tough thing about this is that, I mean, if you've somehow automated all of these tests across all the components and the configuration and the reporting, please get in touch with me because I will pay you loads of money and we can work together. But automation when it comes to doing this testing is really, really hard. So people are expensive. So that's another sort of level of difficulty when it comes to implementing this testing. And the last point I'm going to make is the transparency requirement. I think it is the biggest point that I try to come up to push here when it comes to this sort of testing is no matter what the approach is to XDR testing, I'm well aware that our approach has weaknesses and strengths, and so will a different tester. But when it comes to being transparent of what's in the solution and how the test was done, at least the customer will be able to read and understand how those results were produced. Yeah, I think that's it. And that was bang on 30 minutes, I think. Oh, no, I didn't mention that our report is going to be out at the end of Q3 with Scatter Spider APT29 and Lapsus, but that's just over 30 minutes. So yeah, thank you guys for listening. Sorry if I spoke too fast, but if you want to get in touch with me, that's my LinkedIn QR code or email. I have time for a few more questions if there's any.